It has simply been a great week for China's film market. Over the 7-day lunar period, I should say, ending February 4th, the total box office revenue hit a record $1.3 billion. That number easily topping last year's record of just under $1.1 billion. 187 million moviegoers visited theaters over the course of the week. Animated fantasy Ne Zha 2 led the charge, raking in close to $666 million to become the highest grossing Lunar New Year title in history. It was trailed by Detective Chinatown 1900 and Alibaba's fantasy epic Creation of the Gods 2, Demon Force. Okay, now joining us to talk more about how the Chinese film industry is evolving, Marc Ganis. Marc is the president and co-founder of Jiaflix, a U.S. film production and marketing company that works in China. Welcome to the program. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Sean.
Okay, what are the factors that are contributing to China's record-breaking box office, especially during this year's Spring Festival holiday?
Yeah, there are a number of factors. First, we have to remember the last few years have been a challenge all over the world for box office numbers. Those days appear to be behind us. Both the Chinese public wants to go to more movies, and the government has made it much more attractive with tax incentives to movie theaters and encouraging people to get back out and go out to the theater and go out there multiple times. Don't just go once during the Lunar New Year week, but go multiple times.
Okay, and talk about how the audience, the demand has really shifted in China's film market. Hollywood, for the most part, on the outside looking in, especially given the success of such diverse genres in this season especially.
Yeah, absolutely. What has happened is the Chinese filmmaking has gotten much, much better than it was. I remember when we first started working there, you'd go see a Chinese movie and the technology was bad, the sound didn't match up, the music didn't work. What's happened is over the last decade and a half, Chinese filmmakers have become at the top level in the world. Now they'll get the storylines together that will perhaps make them even more attractive beyond China. But within China itself, we're seeing genres like animation and comedies really take hold. And that's the audience identifying, being discerning, and saying that this is the kind of movie they want, and they're getting it from the Chinese producers.
You know, and there's also this sense of national pride. And if you look at the films that are hit films right now this holiday season, they're based on historical martial arts, fantasy stories that have been passed down with gods and monsters. What does this tell us about what the audiences are looking for?
Well, it tells us a few things. First, that the Chinese have been great storytellers for a lot longer than Hollywood has been around.
Indeed.
And there are great stories with lots of offshoots and permutations from the stories with tremendous characters. So what they're finding now is meaning the Chinese filmmakers can take those great stories and characters and put them on film, connect them with CGI, with animation, with live action, with music, with great backgrounds, and bring those great Chinese stories to life for the audiences. And there are a lot of them that haven't even been gotten to yet. So the future looks very bright for those kinds of films.
Yeah, that was my next question, because, I mean, the box office just jumped out of the box, kind of like Usain Bolt, looking at the Spring Festival. So can it be a barometer, do you think, of the way the film industry in China is going to play out this year?
Yeah, I think so. This is Lunar New Year really is the barometer for how the rest of the year will go. You have two things that have occurred. Number one, the box office numbers have been great. But number two, it's the Chinese public likes the movies. 7 out of 10 have gotten great reviews by the Chinese public. So the movies are getting the people interested and excited. And so it's more likely that they will go to more movies later in the year because they like the quality of the films they're seeing.
Yeah, I'm curious, how long have you been working in China? What has it been like to have a front row seat at watching it just develop and mature like this?
Well, our first project was a joint venture for Transformers 4 back in China. It goes back that far, and we broke every box office record. We broke Avatar's record with that movie, and then Fast and Furious broke our record. what the difference in the quality of the filmmaking is what is so striking. And even back then, I remember being on some panels in some at some of the conferences, and I would be asked, well, what about these superhero movies, and what about these other Hollywood blockbusters coming out? I said, the future of Chinese box office is not Hollywood blockbusters. The future are going to be Chinese blockbusters because of the language barrier, because of the cultural distinctions, and because of the great stories that have yet to be told.
Do you think Hollywood can learn anything, because they bet so much on these blockbusters, and when one flops, it can drag the entire company down for the year?
Yeah, Hollywood has learned, but they still keep making a lot of the same mistakes. But what they've learned is the mid-range movies, they don't get made anymore. Mid-range budget movies don't get made anymore. They're either lower end, or they're the total blockbusters that are the tentpoles that damn well better do well, or it's going to bring down the studio and the parent company for the year. So that's why when you have movies like Barbie or Oppenheimer, those kinds of movies that just explode in the box office, that's great. But what you're seeing is a lot of movies being made for direct to streaming.
Yeah.
And that is the big change in the business model in Hollywood.
Wow, what a change in the landscape. Marc Ganis, always a pleasure, my friend. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you, Sean. Always great to be here.